482 days. For 1 year, 3 months, and 9 days, our daughter Alejandra has been asking to talk to her father to tell him that we love him. Since the arbitrary detention of my husband, Felix Maradiaga, on June 8 last year, the Ortega's regime has not allowed us to have a phone call, a letter, or even a drawing from Felix. Only 2 family members that are in Nicaragua have been able to see him, but because we have been forced into exile, we cannot go to the country. Alejandra is one of the 140 minors, children of political prisoners in my country that have not access to one of their parents. When I spoke at the Oslo Freedom Forum last year, I mentioned there were more than 140 political prisoners. That number has increased to more than 205 political prisoners held by the Ortega's regime because of their commitment to freedom, justice, and democracy. All of them had been sentenced, violating all due process in secret hearings without the access to their lawyers. And all of them are suffering from cruel and inhuman conditions. Felix and other political prisoners that are in El Chipote, that's the way we call the prison, have been incommunicado for long periods of time. They are in cells in completely darkness. They don't have access to sunlight, only once a week for 15 minutes. They are forced to remain absolutely silent. They cannot talk to each other even if they are with someone else. They don't have any reading or writing material, not even a Bible. Some, particularly the female political prisoners, have been in solitary confinement for over a year. And they don't have access to medical attention. So we are desperately worried for their lives. On February 12th this year, Hugo Torres, a retired general, died because of these conditions. He was during 8 months in El Chipote. He was rushed to the hospital and he died under the custody of the police. And we don't want that type of story to be repeated. On July 1st, with the help of the campaign Se Humano Nicaragua, we did a digital narrated portrait of Felix to denounce how he was treated. And the regime reacted. The next day, on July 2nd, they released images of Felix on national TV in a trial where they forced him to sign a 13-year in prison sentence, of course, under false charges. And those images are the only ones that I have had from my husband in over a year. And their media said that we were lying about his physical condition. But as you can see, Felix has lost more than 60 pounds and his health has been deteriorating. Then 2 months later, on August 31st, the regime released pictures in television from all the political prisoners held in El Chipote. But we still are waiting to see those that are under house arrest, because we know all of them have been suffering from psychological and physical torture. The freedom of religion have been the latest victim of the regime in Nicaragua. The Catholic Church was the only institution in the country that could talk up against the regime. But since June this year, they imprisoned 8 priests, including Archbishop Rolando Alvarez, who advocated for the release of the political prisoners and justice in Nicaragua. Civil society organizations also have been criminalized in the country. The regime has shut down 1,700 NGOs from different sectors: health, education, humanitarian relief, business innovation. And just to give you an example, they shut down and confiscated the building of Operation Smile Nicaragua, an organization that provided surgeries for underprivileged kids with cleft palate. And also, in our country, sadly, we have to say there is no freedom of the press anymore. All the independent media outlets have been shut down, confiscated. We reported this year that more than 100 journalists had been forced into exile because of the persecution. And just 2 weeks ago, the regime put out of the air CNN in Spanish. And they were the last critical voices of the regime that could enter the country. The rise of the dictatorship in Nicaragua is also a threat to freedom in the region. Nicaragua is one of the 7 countries in the world that supported the brutal invasion of Russia into Ukraine. And Ortega has gone as far as inviting this military into the country. And we are horrified to think that our country could be hosting this army that had committed atrocities against civilians in Ukraine. My husband stood in this stage in 2019, and he denounced the violation of human rights in Nicaragua. Before his arbitrary detention, he told me to keep raising my voice for freedom. Today, also his freedom. And I have. And I won't stop because I want my daughter to grow up with her daddy by her side. I want to go back to my country without the fear of persecution. And I want my people to live in a society where they can decide their destiny and not be in worry about the next dictatorship. That's why I come to you today and ask you again, please do not forget about the hundreds of Nicaraguans that have been killed and the thousands that have been in prison like my husband, and the 400,000 Nicaraguans that have been forced into exile, running from the persecution and misery. And as my husband always says, in order for nonviolence to be successful, we need international solidarity. We need attention from the world. So I ask you today for your engagement to keep the pressure on Ortega, to release the political prisoners, and to restore democracy in Nicaragua. Thank you.